Okay, so I just want to kind of go through the part writing quiz a little bit. So you guys watch this video so you can kind of see some of the errors that were made a little bit and hopefully improve some of these things. Most importantly, you've got to spell these chords right. Because remember that's a 5-point deduction, and especially since the AP exam is now only including part writing and sight singing, you don't want to lose 5 points for that one mistake. So just think about all the chords in the key of F major for this first one here. And the first one's done for you. So I would go through and make sure the bass line is correct first. So a 5-6-5 chord, the 5 or the dominant note in the key of F is C. So your chord here is going to be C, E, G, B flat. So E is going to be in the bass because it's a 6-5 inversion. Okay, so C, E, G, B flat. E is the third of the chord, so that's going to go in the bass. So we're going to put the E right there. Then we go back to the 1 chord, so that would be an F in the bass. Now, whenever you have the secondary function here, I would always start where it's resolving, which is the 6. The submediant in the key of F is D, so we would put that in the bass because it's in root position. And then we have a 4, subdominant note in the key of F is B flat. And then root position 5 would go to the C. And I would make that actually a half note just so that we're putting the right amount of beats in that measure. So that's a half note on C. Okay, so then start back from the beginning, and you need to be thinking, what is this chord going to be spelled as vertically? We already have that, C, E, G, B flat. We want to do as much stepwise motion as possible. So if we put the B flat up in the soprano, that would be stepwise motion downwards. We still need the root of the chord, which is C. We don't want to have the E in, we don't want to put another E here because we have that E there. So that would be parallel octaves, and you don't want to have a double third. Plus, that's a leading tone. So that way we would do the G in the alto. That would be contrary motion there between the soprano and the alto. And then that leaves us with a root leaping by third, which again is also contrary motion to the bass. Then we need to go back to an F chord, but we can't just go back to the way we voiced it here, because remember that when you have a 7th in an outer voice, it has to resolve downwards. So now that B flat is going to resolve down to the third of the chord, which is A. Sorry. So then we need 2 Fs. So I would go back to the F in the alto. So that's stepwise motion. That is parallel motion there, but that's parallel thirds, which is totally fine. And that allows us to then put the 5th here and keep the common tone in that tenor. Okay, again, like I said, I would build the 6th chord here. I would put to try to keep the tenor in that same register. And then do the F and the A here. So we have that D as doubled with the root. And then with the 5-4-3 of 6, the 6 is D, which means the 5 chord in the key of D is going to be A. And so we have A, C, E, G, because it's a 7th chord, 4-3. But because this is a tonicization of the relative minor, or the submediant, we need to have the secondary leading tone leading us here to D. So that means this note is going to be a C sharp. It's also 4-3 position, which means that second inversion, so the E is going to be in the bass. So that would allow us to have the E here. The C sharp would need to move chromatically in that tenor. Make sure you spell that with a C sharp and not a C natural. Because again, if you spell this with a C natural, that's going to give you a point off for the chord spelling, and then you're going to lose your 2 points for approaching that chord and 2 points for resolving that chord. So now we have the C sharp and the E. We still need the A and the G. So keep the A as a common tone in the soprano, and that leaves us with the G, which would be the 7th, and it also allows that 7th, even though it's not an outer voice, to resolve down by step. Then we have the 4 chord. We have B flat. We need another B flat, so I would do contrary motion between the outer voices, moving that A up to the B flat. Keep the common tone as an F in the alto, and then that also allows you to keep that common tone in the tenor. So you have two common tones there, and then contrary motion in the other voices, which is beautiful part writing. Then for the last chord, we want to double the root with the C, and then we have the E and the G. And that would give you a nice clean part writing for the major example. For the minor example, this one is in C minor. So again, you need to be thinking about what notes are going to be used in C minor, and specifically with harmonic minor, we would need to do naturals. And you also need to be thinking about that we have some other accidentals here that are being indicated. Okay, so that's going to be an important thing here that we're dealing with at the end. So the first thing you need to go through here, since it's an FR5, which means it's figured bass as opposed to Roman numerals, you actually have to give the Roman numerals. So obviously this first chord in the key of C minor is a 1. Make sure you make that as a lowercase 1. When you have a 6/4 with a slash through it, that means two things. It means that the bass, well, actually means three things. It means that the bass note is the 5th of the chord, which means that that is in second inversion. And the slash of the 6 means that the 6th above the bass, which would actually be natural, literally, be natural, is going to be altered from the key signature, because you'll see we have B flat in the key signature, but that slash through the 6 indicates the 6th above the bass, which is B flat, but we're going to raise it a half step from the diatonic version, which is going to be B natural. And that makes sense because that is the leading tone in C. So then you're looking through here and saying, okay, this would be a G, B, D chord, because D is the 5th. So we would keep the G as a common tone, and then we would move here to the D. And that would give us the notes that it's indicating here, the 6th and the 4th above the bass, and that indicates to us a 5-6-4 chord. Now, remember that 6/4 chords have to be used in a very specific way, and it is being used here properly as a passing 6/4, because the bass note is passing between the C and the E, which then gives us a 1-6 in this chord. Okay, if we look forward to the next chord here, we have a 6/5. Again, that is an inversion of a 7th chord, because this is going to be the root, this is going to be the 7th, and that's going to indicate that this is the 3rd of the chord, which means we're dealing with a D, F, A flat, C chord, which you can see this is diminished, and that is a minor 7th, so this is going to be a half diminished 7 chord. D is the root, because F is the 3rd, and again, D is the 6th above the bass, which we would put right here as the 6th above the bass. And then we have the F, A flat, C. So that's diminished, and it's in the key of C. D is the 2nd. So this would be a 2 half diminished 6/5 for the chord progression. Now, this thing here is a little bit confusing just because it has a lot more information than you actually need. It does indicate the 6/4 chord here, which means a second inversion triad. It also means that you need to have an 8th above the bass, which is doubled, which we would want to do that anyway, because you know that in a 6/4 chord we always double the bass. And then we see that this is moving down from 6/4 to 5/3, because remember that the 3 is implied unless it has a natural there, and that means that the 3rd above the bass, which is B flat, once again is indicating that leading tone in the key of C minor. So that is a 5 chord, and it has the 7th above it. So this is a cadential 6/4 chord. Minor 1-6-4, going down to the 5-7 with that natural B leading tone. And then it's giving you 4 natural. This indicates that we have a 4th above the bass, which is F, resolving down to the 3rd above the bass, which is actually a natural note. Now, a 3rd above C is E natural. That is not a 5 chord. That's not the leading tone. What we're dealing with here with the E natural is actually a Picardy 3rd, because we're having a major 1 at the end of the C minor example. Okay, so now these chords are labeled correctly with Roman numerals. Now we got to spell them correctly. We already did chord 2. So then we want to do here, once again, we don't want to go back up to the E because that will create some parallel issues for us. So in the soprano, we're going to put that root. Remember, we want the root in the soprano as much as possible so that we can double that root, or double the root from the soprano in a 6th chord, because you always want to double the soprano if possible. So the best way to do that is putting the root there. Sometimes that doesn't work, but in this case it works really nicely, because then we get this contrary motion here from the bass and the soprano. And then that leaves us with the nice common tone of G in the alto voice. Okay, then for the 2-6-5, we have D, F, A flat, C. We already have the F, we already have the D. We need the A flat and the C. C can be common tone in the soprano, which leaves us with an A stepwise motion here. Now, you may be thinking that like, oh, this is a parallel issue here because it's C up to D and G here, which is correct. But you'll notice that D up to A flat is actually a tritone. So this is known as unequal fifths, which if you can't avoid it, great. In this case, this is still like going to be the best answer because it's going to create a lot of spacing issues and or doubling errors if you do that. So parallel fifths is unacceptable. You can't do that. But in this case, unequal fifths, because you're moving to that 2 diminished 6-5, is actually okay. Then 8-6-4 here, that means we're dealing with a 1-6-4 chord, or the cadential 6-4. This being the bass note is the 5th. So we want to double that. I would do that back here with a G. And then keep that common tone again in that soprano voice. And then we are missing the E. We have C and G. We need the 3rd of the chord, so put the E up here in the tenor. Then we have our leading tone that we need to lead back up to C, so I would do that in the soprano. B natural. Please don't forget that B natural. That is indicated right there. The 3rd above the bass has to be natural, and that is the leading tone. If you don't put that B natural, you're losing 5 points because you're losing a point for this chord spelling, and then you're losing the 2 points on each side of it. That has to lead back up to the C. Sorry, I'll put that as a half note so that it's rhythmically accurate. And then if we have this G here as a 7th chord, G, B, D, F, I would put the D by step in the tenor from the E flat. It's half step. And then you would also move by step here with the 7th. Now, this 4-3 is different from the 4-3 up here. This 4-3 up and down indicates a 4th and a 3rd above the bass harmonically, which gives us a 7th chord in 2nd inversion. This 4-3 is horizontally, which means we're doing a melodic 3rd above the bass. Melodic 4th above the bass, resolving down to the 3rd. So in this case, it's acting as a suspension. You'll notice this is a half note, but somewhere we're going to need a suspension where it's just a 4th above the bass resolving down to the natural 3rd. So remember, a suspension, 4-3 suspension, has to be approached by a common tone. So think about what voice could we use a 4th above the bass where it would be a common tone? Right here in the alto. There's the F, that is the 4th above C. So we can suspend that F here as a quarter note and then resolve down to that Picardy 3rd as a suspension into that Picardy 3rd. And then that leaves us with the C, and I would do that just, you can triple the root here and omit the 5th because again with 5-7 chords to make all of the suspensions and all the leading tones correct, you can omit the 5th only in a 5-7-1 at a final perfect authentic cadence. So that would give us the best answer for this one. Hopefully that was helpful.